Hello, and be welcome to the world of darkness. Long ago was it that the sin of Cain spawned the cursed horror that stalks the street at night in search of living blood. The Kindred have long been a secret influence through all ages of human history, plotting against one another in a never-ending jihad. Their immortal progeny are among us to this day, hidden from the eyes of humanity by an elaborate masquerade.
As the horse hooves clatter on the cobbled stones of the street, Rebecca finds herself departing from northern London, out of Highgate and closer to the area of Regent's Park. However, as she moves deeper into the city proper, passing by Portman Square, she finds herself in Mayfair, not too far away actually from Hyde Park, coming up onto a 3-story residence on Collier Street, maybe a block away from Blackburn's Mews. The house before her is brightly illuminated, every window of the house bearing light shone through the curtains. Several carriages are parked on either side of the street, allowing for party-goers attending to make their way to the private residence. Rebecca acknowledges that she recognizes this place. It's one she's been to in the company of her brother, it belonging to none other than their host of the evening, Richard Wiltshire, a gentleman of the Golden Dawn that she is vaguely acquainted with on account of his interests. As Charnock's man looks for a place where to park, they have a brief interval in which the two of them may speak openly, without interruption, before going into the brightly lit place, full of mortals.
As Rebecca looks out the window to see the residence, she turns her head towards Alexander. How is it that you came by the knowledge of this ball?
He offers a somewhat ashamed smile as he throws up a hand. Personal interest. He at last looks to her and acquiesces in full. If you must know, there's a Japanese delegate in London. For what reason I'm not sure, but in my curiosity I found that he's been invited to this little soiree. So through a mutual acquaintance, I just had to invite myself. How better to learn of Japan than by some foreign dignitary? It was only after I inquired a little further that I found out the Golden Dawn was involved.
You certainly must tell me what you find so interesting about Japan and the likes of the Orient one of these nights.
Well, if we find a private room here during the ball, we should discuss it after I've had a word with the man. Though do stay away from Mr. Goldaming.
Oh, how so?
He takes a moment to give an exasperated roll of the eyes. Lord Goldaming is attempting to woo my confidant who invited me here, and he's a bit of an ass.
Oh, you should be sure that I will stay far away in that case.
Much appreciated. I wouldn't want to have to deal with him again. Last time was painful enough. You are able to recognize, even as you approach, that those attending the ball are not exclusively members of the secret society, but it is being used as a front for them. As the carriage is pulled to a slow through eventual and inevitable stop, the horses snorting and rearing, their back hooves shaking free something which may have gotten caught, Charnock looks to her and smiles, pretty much giving her the look of, shall we?
Rebecca gives a slight nod and a smile as she steps out.
Departing from the carriage, Charnock holds out his left hand to her, his right holding his cane, which is firmly planted on one of the stones of the street. A couple of young boys go up in the street, one holding a large satchel, the other shoving and pushing at him, while making somewhat inappropriate comments in jest. A couple of young boys doing just what a couple of young boys do, and the way the young boys are friends. An older couple looks at them hauntingly from the steps of their home as they go out for the evening. Across the way, the brightly lit manor in which they will be having the ball, no doubt a much smaller, more sedate one, considering the size of the estate wouldn't be able to have open guests in the hundreds. That side of the street is quite lax, the last man going in being unaccompanied. Poor form.
Rebecca would step down, taking his hand.
The moment she descends, he takes her hand, clasping it gently and immediately tucking it under his arm as he takes her across the street. The carriage getting close, though moving at a very slow, sedated pace, comes to a very sudden halt as it gets near the two of them. A snort and rearing of fear, yet it calms quickly as the driver soothes it, and the two of them, more importantly, get out of the way. Once they are more poignantly across the street, now at the doors of the lovely manor, they see themselves up the stairs and once at the top are swiftly greeted by the host. A large, portly gentleman of white hair, his spectacles resting on the brim of his nose, needing to be pushed up. He holds out his hands warmly and widely. "Good evening! Good evening! Good evening, Miss Thorne. It would have been a while since I have seen you at my home. And who is this dashing fellow with you? I must beg your apologies, sir. I'm unacquainted."
As Rebecca first stopped at the door of the house, she would have employed the blush of life. Out of character, would it be proper etiquette to introduce him and then Charnock, as he is the host?
Intelligence etiquette. As Rebecca ponders for a brief moment, taking only long enough to recall her mother's teachings, which she so harshly drilled into her, it would, of course, be wise to curtsy before the host and thank him graciously for his invitation. Even though it isn't technically sent to her, either way it is polite. And then proceed with introducing him and then Charm.
Rebecca would give a polite and courteous smile as she curtsies to their host. All too true. It has been far too long, Mr. Wiltshire, though I am ever so grateful for your invitation. Please, allow me to introduce the two of you. She looks and gestures to the host.
He holds up his hand. "There'll be no need for that, Lady Thorne." He then turns his attention to Alexander, whom, for a moment, smiles at the man. She can see Mr. Wiltshire adjust his tie a bit, waiting for Charnock to say something, before moving her hand more tightly into his grasp. Charnock smiles. "Alexander Charnock. A pleasure, Mr. Wiltshire. I don't believe we've had the pleasure of meeting before." "No, certainly not. It is good to see that you have brought good company." "Why, yes, I did. I thank you for your gracious invitation, and more so, thanks to Catherine Hughes for ensuring our invitation. Would be wrong of us to dismiss such a contribution." Wiltshire curls his lip a little bit, but nods, acquiescing. "Have a good evening. The master of ceremonies this evening is Mr. Beck." He points out an older gentleman in spectacles that is on the other side of the room, sipping champagne. "Thank you." And with that, Charnock sees himself in. Wit's empathy. Something was... maybe she said something wrong to upset them. Nevertheless, as you're seen into the room accompanied by Alexander, he gives a sweep of the room. Pausing momentarily, you notice that there is about 24 people, so they are moving between rooms. The bulk of the crowd staying within 2 of the rooms. On the left side of the manor is a makeshift ballroom, the other being a large sitting room in which champagne, cigarettes, cigars, no doubt a bit of opium, is taking place. The ladies sat to themselves in different places along the wall, the gentlemen moving about the room in busy bee motion, constantly buzzing from one conversation to the next, occasionally going to the ladies to speak or an invite to a dance as a new song is playing. The interior is quite old-fashioned. In fact, it's very reminiscent of, well, admittedly, is somewhat more luxurious, as Wiltshire is a wealthy man, but it is reminiscent of her parents' home in its style. suggesting that the actual interior of the place has probably been unchanged since it was the fashionable look, Mr. Wiltshire being a bit old-fashioned himself, evidently. Though by the size of his beard and its color, that would probably go without saying.
Rebecca would be silent a moment as they come into the room, reminiscing over her old family home.
Inclining his lips towards her ear, Charnock would ask, "Does anyone catch your eye?" Other than Wiltshire, the only person Rebecca knows who would be of interest, though access might be stretching it, would be Edward Drake, considering his interest in death and sentience beyond life. Wits and subterfuge. There are strong rumors about Drake, though they've never been substantiated. Considering all the peoples in attendance, it really just comes as a guessing game if anyone in the room would be able to substantiate them. Intelligence etiquette. Traditionally, and as Rebecca is sure to find out if she proceeds, upon arrival, men will lead the women through the changing room and then lead them back to the dance floor, or somewhat stationed. Men are expected to be extremely active during the ball to make up for the passivity of the ladies. The ladies do not ask them to dance and cannot even be seen to cross the dance floor unescorted. They must be conveyed to their station by a gentleman, and there they wait until another gentleman comes to speak to them and ask them to dance or convey them to the punch bowl or somewhere else. Pretty much playing a game of hot potato. Effectively, there's a lot expected of both sides. For instance, Charnock is expected to always walk around her train, that being her dress, and never stepping on it. Otherwise, he is in deep trouble. It's also why he's wearing white gloves, because that is the expected at a ball. All the men are wearing white gloves, as are all the ladies. If a man were to invite Rebecca to a dance, then, if she were to refuse him, polite etiquette would say she would not accept another invitation for the same dance. In fact, the Master of Ceremonies is the only person allowed to go up to anybody and make introductions, as well as to ask for whom they are. Rebecca would be taken to the dressing room where she could, only to the access of other ladies, change, put on makeup, or she could just be seen to wherever she wants. Hence Charnock asking if anyone's caught her attention or not, meaning she can say she would like to go over there or over there, and even just say that she needs to talk to some guy because she knows he has his own interests. But clearly he's not spotted them yet. Now, admittedly, Rebecca is allowed to go speak to the gentleman present, having Charnock escort her over, initiate conversation, and then start talking to them. Alternatively, there's always the Lady Anne method of not giving a fuck and doing as she pleases, which is somewhat becoming more common in this day and age. Women dance, drink, gossip, talk, and go around the room on the arm of whatever gentleman they say yes to. Usually there's even a lady who's the kind of queen bee of them, setting the newest fashion, pretty much the controller of the ladies, gossip among the high society types, and typically has her own circle in which she ever has a party or the like. If you're invited to that, you're in good company. Well, at least politically speaking. The fact of the matter is, there is rules of etiquette of the ballroom, and unfortunately, in the eyes of some, they are gradually dying. More often and more often in the 1880s, you will see women unescorted going to the ballroom, saying no to one gentleman and then the very next second saying yes to the next. All kinds of little rules being broken, which is to the dismay of many. Rebecca likely won't like that, given that you more or less enjoy indulging in the tradition and etiquette of things. Sadly, that's under attack by the women these nights. More and more women feeling emboldened to just walk right up to a man. They won't ask them to dance, but they will seek a man's attention. In fact, one of the rules of a ball is no having sex. But it happens. So little rules are being broken. Again, not to the point where it just nobody cares, but it's becoming more common that little things are being overlooked. For instance, you will occasionally see ladies go and just get themselves a drink and sit back down again. Because from a historical standpoint, it's funny because some people would say that it's a very misogynistic thing. Yet the men are expected to constantly be moving around, being the one to approach and ask, probably get turned down, take the ladies wherever they want to go. The men have just as many rules imposed on them as the ladies. If anything, the men aren't allowed to really sit down, so they better be comfortable on their feet. Charnock's benefit is he doesn't care because he's undead.
Might you assist me with a matter?
He raises his brow. Is this a personal matter or Tremere?
Personal.
Then you have my full attention.
I should like to speak with Mr. Edward Drake. There have been a couple rumors of him bribing men of the cloth for access to occult tomes and theurgy. I should think that Mr. Joseph Breton, she briefly describes the state of dress of the two men. He might know whether or not these rumors have any substance, as he has an interest in Gnostic interpretations, and a deep fascination with studies into the religious academia and its possible influences. However, I fear I am woefully out of touch at such conventions.
He offers a somewhat mischievous smile. So then, shall we find this Mr. What was his name again? Mr. Breton.
Yes, quite.
With her on his arm, he leads her first to the punch bowl, where he gathers himself a glass filled with wine, and allows her to grab one if she wishes. He does whisper in her ear, however, "It's better to blend in."
She does so.
And sloshing his drink, he takes a moment to appreciate its smell, before very discreetly leaning over to admire what else is on the table, inclining his body at an angle. She sees that he splashes some onto and over one of the other cups, to make it look like he's already had a bit to drink, before seeing her off. He very quickly isolates and approaches Mr. Breton, whom, smoking his pipe, has taken a moment in the center of the room to look around. As another gentleman begins to approach him, Charnock very bluntly thrusts out his left hand with which he clasps the glass, so to cut off the man, yet appear as though he is an open-armed greeting as he steps into Mr. Breton's line of sight. "Mr. Joseph Breton, please forgive my audacious approach. I heard you are a man that I simply must speak to." Somewhat taken aback, Breton holds his pipe in his hand, considering, before nodding, holding out his hand. "A pleasure, Mr. Charno, Alexander Charno." He shakes his hand firmly, and then gestures to Rebecca. "I believe you are already acquainted with my companion, Rebecca Thorne." Breton studies Rebecca cautiously for a moment before it seems to dawn on him that he does in fact recognize her. "Ah, yes. Rebecca Thorne, the sister of Edmund. Haven't seen the man for a while. Is he well?"
Rebecca would hold out her hand, palm facing downward for him to take, and when he does so, she gives a brief curtsy before she replies, "Yes, my brother, Mr. Thorne, is preoccupied by much business as of late, but he is well."
Mr. Breton, kissing the back of her hand, releases it, looking up at her and then to Charnock with a wistful sigh. "Very sad to hear that. I do hope to see him again. Are you two enjoying yourselves this evening?" Charnock holds up his glass, partially emptied. "Very much so. We came here to escape a nasty bit of rumors that have been circulating." He gestures to Rebecca. "About Drake and other guests who may be attending. I have no mind for idle gossip." Mr. Breton seems to take the bait. "Ah, yes. Idle gossip is abundant, especially among these circles." Perception empathy. She can see that, as he says such a thing, His eyes very quickly flicker over to none other than Mr. Drake. Only they come back to her with a slight sneer, as he kind of shakes his head, very faintly, almost imperceptibly so, suggesting he is a bit of a distaste for Mr. Drake, and one that has run deeply enough for him to perhaps know said rumors. Considering how much he dislikes Mr. Drake, apparently, it wouldn't be beyond thought that he may have a distaste for the man sufficient enough to be aware of or even spread rumors about him.
I don't suppose that you've come across any this evening that we should be particularly wary of, Mr. Breton. Or, on the contrary, that might perhaps provide added entertainment for this evening.
Charisma subterfuge. He takes another pop of his pipe, drawing in the smoke which comes from a bitter, harsh scent, almost as though he's smoking weeds of some kind. It's not a very pleasant odor, though it's not quite tobacco either, before he lets loose a stream from his nostrils like some mythical dragon. Well, you've probably heard of the rumors regarding Mr. Drake. Something best to be avoided, all that nonsense. The only rumors I know for certain with that man is his interests are not in the supernatural or metaphysical, purely in the realm of the mundane. Inclining, Alexander swishes his beverage a bit. Realm of the mundane? Then shouldn't he not be studying among such educated fellows as your order? One would presume. And I was told that Mr. Drake was of fine repute, if having some odd hobbies. Breton at that shakes his head. A gentleman, maybe. A capable scholar, certainly. But studier, only for the mundane. If you must truly know Mr. Charnock, so that you don't get involved with the wrong sort. And he gestures to Rebecca. So your brother isn't wrapped up into this affair. Mr. Drake has been given some unfortunate news regarding his health. Thus his studies are purely motivated by a means of circumventing his inevitably poor health. Not befit a man of such parapsychological study.
That sounds all rather dreadful.
Precisely my thinking. I believe if you're going to be a man of parapsychological studies, that you should be a man of asking greater questions. It is the supernatural precisely because it transcends the mundane. To be trapped in the natural means you've limited your own faculties. It's very distressing to see the Order allow such men. Charnock inclines his head. It's just as you say. But then everybody has become an aesthetic. Be it atheism, be it the supernatural, everything is just somebody's cry for attention. Somebody wanting to be part of the crowd. It's as you say. Yes, it's unfortunate is what it is. Was a time when men spoke of God because they believe. Was a time when men spoke that they loved the woman because they did. Now everything is just smoke and mirrors, like so many of those would-be psychics that you see offering to entertain at parties. Breton snorts. Miss Thorne, I find your gentleman companion to be quite enjoyable company. And you're all too true. Drake has also sponsored several of these people wishing to annotate their supposed beliefs and findings. He shakes his head. I give no credence to those who have not displayed thoroughly their understanding and higher learning. Such gifts would be wasted on those who do not possess higher learning, because then they do not know the full extent of that which they should be saying. He looks to Rebecca. Miss Thorne, despite her disabilities, is a woman of learning, with the benefit of gifts. Thus she knows the questions which must be asked, answered, and annotated, whereas these street performers, for that's all they can be called, are only worthy of the circus because they don't even know what questions need be asked, much less the answers or analyses which are needed to annotate. Charnock smiled. Then wouldn't it be better to educate these women, or provide a man of learning who could educate them, or rather, ask the appropriate questions? Breton seems to go into quiet deliberation. You may have a point. Perhaps I might strike up one of these fanciful ladies of the parlor, if I can find any of reputable source. Charnock gives the man a short handshake once again. Well, sir, it's time I made my maneuvers around the room, but I do hope your own studies continue. Ah, yes. Gnostic. Something often overlooked, I feel sometimes. But it's been making good progress. I would suggest looking into the Venetian if you haven't already. Byzantium, but I will keep that suggestion in mind. They incline their heads. Rebecca does so out of courtesy, and begin to move back within the social circles of the room, Charnock looking down at her with a perked eye.
As they do walk away, her on his arm, she would slightly tighten her grip on his arm as though appreciatively.
As she does so, she notes that he is taking her to the very center of the room. She can see that the band is about to begin a new song, and she very quickly gets what he is thinking. He wants to dance. Stopping in the center of the room, he holds out his hand to her after having her let go and inclining his head in a deep bow, requesting to dance.
She would smile, taking his hand and curtsying, accepting his request.
What a dance it is! As they lean into each other's arm, one hand on her hip, the other splaying out her hand, he begins the spinning dance of the waltz, though very quickly it begins to evolve. As raising one hand above, holding hers above her head and releasing her hips, he spins her about him in a circle, before drawing her back suddenly and slowly, focusing from the hips first. It becomes a sultry, slow, with intervals of quick motion manner of dance. At one point, as they are inclined, faces obscured by his long hair, he smiles, looking into her silvery eyes. What is it you're after with these secretive little mortals? Before she can answer, he thrusts her backward, spinning her around and drawing her forwards again as he moves her arm across his chest and steps back from the way she came, before bringing her once again in a spin back into his arms, faces meeting.
A Book of the Dead. Wiltshire has access. Drake would be interested.
Inclining his head towards her, he smiled. And do you want this thing? Yes?
I would. They have not allowed me to attempt to translate it.
He continues to dance with her in quiet, his eyes lingering around the room, focusing on Wiltshire, and then for a moment looking to Drake. As the dance begins to slow, he inclines her back to his front, so that he might whisper in her ear. Then allow me to save you some time. What you're looking for doesn't belong to them anymore. Seems it's something the Arcanum took with them on their way out. They're only pretending they still have it. In a final spin, he brings her back to him. I'll get your book. His eyes flicker to the other side of the room. But first I have something of my own interest. Following his gaze, she finds what he's looking at. A distinctly Asiatic fellow. With that final word, he looks about the room and inquires soundlessly without word to her, merely communicating with his eyes as he widens them, then glances about as to say, "Where do you want to go?"
Would you not want to speak to the new arrival? She says as she very briefly, only noticeable to Charnock, glances at this Asian-looking man.
Do you wish to join me?
I would.
With that, he swiftly crosses the room, keeping her hand held again in his arm, towards this Asiatic fellow whose wife on his arm seems very out of place, looking around the room like a frightened doll more than a respectable woman in her own right. As he approaches, Charnock offers a deep bow to the gentleman. "May I have a Mr. Fujiwara?" The man seems somewhat surprised, but nevertheless nods. "Yes, I am Mr. Fujiwara. I don't believe we have had the pleasure. Holding out his hand, they shake their hands very briefly. Alexander Charnock. I actually came here because I wish to speak to you, Mr. Bunta Fujiwara. I understand you are a dignitary of some sort of your native country of Japan. Yes, I am a dignitary and a philanthropist. Come from Nagasaki. The treaty port. You are educated in my homeland. I am deeply interested in your homeland. Well, as no one seems to have approached me, he bows. Allow me to more properly introduce myself. Bunta Fujiwara. This is my wife. He gestures to the very tiny little Asian woman who hardly says a word. Nagisa Fujiwara. She holds out her hand, which Charnock kisses the back of the knuckles of. Pleasure to meet you, my dear. May I say I love the patterns of your dress. He gestures. Of the Chinese bellflower. Interesting choice. Both of them seem somewhat taken aback before he waves his hand. As I said, I'm something of an enthusiast for the lands of your people, as well as China, and much of the Orient. It's become something of an aesthetic here, though I find myself more drawn to it culturally. That is very interesting. And who might your companion be? He gestures to her. Miss Rebecca Thorne, one of the colleagues of the gentleman running about this place.
She offers a polite and courteous smile, giving a slight curtsy. Pleasure to make your acquaintance.
He, taking her proffered hand, kisses the back of her knuckles and looks to his wife for a moment, before looking back to Mr. Charnock. You said you wished to speak to me, Mr. Charnock. Why, yes, I did. Maybe we should move to one of the other rooms. You could have a cigarette. We could talk. The man smiles broadly. Ah, you noticed me looking around the room then, yes? It's hard to miss. I recognize the twitchy fingers and slight stain under your fingernails, suggesting you prefer Western tobacco. Bunta looks to his nails, then back to Charnock, somewhat distressed that it's so evident. His wife seems to smile a little bit. You are a very observant man, Mr. Charnock, but I appreciate your attention. Yes, let us find a place to sit and smoke and talk. At least, maybe somewhat in that order. Shall we? Oh, he leans over, putting down his glass and grabbing a full one. The very full one that he left behind, and handing it off to his wife. For you, my dear. Looking to her husband, he nods, and she takes the glass, muttering a very quiet word that you can't quite understand, some Japanese gibberish. Arigato. Perception etiquette. Natural linguist will apply. From context, you can gather that it means thank you, and with that, they quickly see themselves to the sitting room where, sat in a couple of seats across from one another, you and Charnock, Bunta and Nagisa, Bunta very quickly lighting a cigarette, which Charnock doesn't seem inclined, for some mysterious reason, to accept one, waving it away, instead making a passing joke. Very soon the two of them begin to converse. So what is it you wish to speak to me of, Mr. Charnock? Well, I was actually hoping to inquire about the state of your country at the moment. The last I heard anything was about some business which happened in 77. Ah, the Saigo Rebellion. Seems you are very much out of touch with what has been going on then, I am happy to help. Yes, by all means, I have been hearing and seeing a great deal of change from Japan, particularly in the way many of your goods are coming into England. That is true. We have been modernizing parts of our country. Our government is even considering drawing up a constitution. It is, how is it? The idea of a political party that does not govern, but whose function is to compete in opposition to those in power is does not come easily to some Japanese. Advocates, however, are successfully arguing that modernization demands the institution of a two-party government. As it is, 7 years ago, the Emperor announced the National Representative Assembly will be inaugurated in the coming year, in 1890. Delegates have been sent abroad to study other nations' constitutions. Charnock seems to absorb this information with a fervor. They go into economy, and how that's been changing, as well as some of the new institutions beginning to crop up, such as railroads, banks, industries, particularly growing rapidly in Nagasaki. A few more economic speaking points, such as exports being rapidly increased with that of finished goods, but imports of raw materials also on the rise. All in all, it's not the most stimulating conversation for your behalf. They do very briefly touch on matters of religion, seeing that Nagasaki might become the home of Christianity in Japan, should it be allowed. As he brings up Christianity, naturally Charnock asks if he is Christian, to which the man says yes, he is Roman Catholic. However, the legislation of Christianity has yet to be passed, although it is present in Japan already. Again, they do discuss it briefly, where it was actually introduced in Japan in Nagasaki back in 1602 by Augustinian missionaries.
Where, might I ask, in Japan is traditional Japanese religion and spiritualism more present?
At that, he gives a moment's pause, pulling the cigarette away from his lips. That would be Ehime, or Kyoto. Anywhere in and around the imperial city of Oyodo or Osaka, Kyoto. That is where Shinto is more prominent. Though Christianity has reached those shores, but the further north or more rural areas are still heavily dominated by the Shinto. Christianity has had an interesting effect where it has been incorporated. Yet there are still many practicing Roman Catholics in Japan who still have Japanese traditions incorporated into the faith, especially when doing prayer.
If I'm not disrupting the conversation, might you briefly explain what Shinto might be?
Shintoism is... He puts a hand over his heart. May her soul rest in peace. My mother and father's faith before reaching myself. Shintoism is a belief that everything possesses a spiritual essence. That energy called kami, from the mountains to the rivers, even to the concepts such as family and respect. The importance of purity, harmony, and respect for nature, family, and subordination of individual to group is very prevalent in Shintoism. Humans are thought to be fundamentally good and evil, believed to be caused by disruptive evil spirits. There are not a single god in Shinto. There is many gods, the kami as they are. Furthermore, the soul is believed to originate in the spirit world of the kami, then going into man when man is born. These natural forces which we know are believed to, by Shintoism, to be influenced by prayer and purification. I am not so familiar with all the details of Shintoism. My wife knows more, though she is also Roman Catholic. But I can explain what I know.
That is quite all right. I do find it all quite fascinating, if you don't mind me making further inquiry. When you mentioned the kami as multiple gods, if I'm not mistaken, are they... Well, would you consider them as good, neutral, or evil, as you mentioned spirits?
Yes, they exist for every living thing in nature. Tree, box, flowers, animals, even sounds contain kami.
And you say these exist on a different plane?
Taking a quick puff of his cigarette, he inclines his head, nodding. Yes, a spiritual world, as it were. The world of the kami. Something that can only be visited by man if man is sufficiently spiritual. A dedicated Shinto with great enlightenment Charnock provides. Yes, enlightenment. Enlightenment. That is correct. Yes? Yes, you've got it, my friend.
Fascinating.
Does Shintoism have a Bible? Yes, it has the Kojiki and the Chronicles of Japan, though it is referred to in native language as Nihonji. Could we acquire one such book from your native country? Maybe you could have one sent? Yes, I think that would be arrangeable. Do you have an address? Someplace we could meet again? By all means, I'm sure we can arrange such. There's a wonderful inn on Hampstead called the Spaniards Inn. Little of our culture in exchange for a little of yours. Smiling, Bunta inclines his head. You are a good friend, Mr. Charnock. I think I will enjoy talking to you. You think you will? Sir, I'd have expected us to have already enjoyed each other's company. Bunta laughs, but then quiets himself, as many in the room look at him. It's bad manners on a ball to laugh and to be loud. His wife gives him a disapproving look, and he holds out a hand. I apologize. Perfectly fine. The conversation continues in admittedly more secular subjects, but then, knowing Charnock, as he's been gathering information on the periphery now, he begins digging into the culture. In fact, he finds out a couple of interesting things. For one, many Westerners have begun getting employed in Japan, and even the government itself is employing Europeans and Americans as engineers, financial and legal advisors, agricultural experts, teachers, and military instructors. And in fact, the battle is brought up between some of the last samurai class, apparently according to what Mr. Fujiwara has to say, that one of the American instructors for the military was taken prisoner and even became an honorary samurai, fighting with them in the last battle and was gunned down by the new Imperial Army. Which leads into a conversation about the samurai. Art is brought up, though it's actually Nagisa who takes over the conversation with her husband's behest. And every time she seems to go a little quiet, Charnock is a bit flirty, switching subjects to how do men and women court each other in Japan, and that seems to renew her interest. All these little romantic details to which, at one point, to get her interest, he describes to her the bouquet he made. She's positively blushing, even under the makeup, to which she sees Bunta say, "You are a very smooth operator, Mr. Charnock." They exchange cards, business cards, and make promises to meet each other another time. With that, back to the circulation of the ball. And at one point they find themselves in a private room on the balcony, looking out over the streets of London, plumes of industrial smog in the distance, the gaslight lamps of London beneath them, and the clack of horse hooves and people going about their nightly lives growing fainter and fainter as shadows dominate the streets. Withdrawing back into the room, one of the gentlemen of the evening, a young man whom she recognizes as Harris, has come into the room, inquiring if he's familiar with her, because he seems distinctly to remember her. And yet before he can really finish his conversation, Charnock has sunk his fangs into the man, and the two share a meal.